My wife was, I think, 8 months pregnant with our second daughter, and at the time I was traveling about 35,000 miles a year on the road. It's kind of shit or get off the pot. Do you want to keep going this route, or do you want to take a chance and do something? You can sit back and blame you and your program for not working, or take a look in the mirror and say, well, are you actually doing anything that we set out to do? Being on Deloitte's most innovative and top AI companies, I believe they landed number 24 on that list out of like 500 companies, having a comp plan that was 50K above where my previous one was at.
Michael went from traditional sales at Keyence to one of Deloitte's fastest growing companies in the US in literally 2 months of joining the incubator. We've opened a clean, direct path to moving into an AE role in a year or two from now, and essentially into roles where reps are clearing predictably almost 500,000 every year. Inside the incubator, we focus on careers, not single jobs. Here's the story of how we made it happen. Enjoy. Hey, Michael. Great meeting you. How are you?
Doing great.
Meeting
Good.
you,
How about
just
yourself?
seeing you.
Yeah.
It's a bit earlier. Awesome. So thank you for making the time again to meet with me today. And what I was hoping to do was just to do a postmortem, of the work that we've been doing when you joined the incubator last summer through the moment you landed your offer in December. And I think a good place to start would be maybe for you to just take me back, before we started working together. What were you doing? What was your day-to-day like? Where were you working? What capacity? What industry? Let me know how it was before.
Yeah, before I started working with you, I was working at a company called Keyence. It is probably one of the bigger companies in the industrial automation space for manufacturing, based out of Japan. So a very rigid structure and a very great company. I have nothing bad to say about them, but it was a great time there. Started out my sales career there for just about 7 years with those guys. I studied industrial engineering, so it was a good fit to jump into, the manufacturing side of things, but also be able to itch that sales scratch. So started out there, worked my way up through 3 or 4 promotions during that time. And I did pretty much everything. I was kind of a jack of all trades, from all the outbounding, prospecting, to scheduling my own meetings, booking meetings, doing demos, doing on-site support, follow-up calls, everything like that. So I really was, the jack of all trades, and kind of, as they like to say, the CEO of your own territory. So covered absolutely everything there. So yeah, by the time that I reached out to you, my wife was, I think, 8 months pregnant with our second daughter. And at the time I was traveling about 35,000 miles a year on the road, driving. So eating away a lot of family time, and was looking for something, one, a little bit more remote, but also just a kind of another step. I had somewhat hit the peak of where I could be at Keyence in terms of the sales side of things before getting into management, and wanted to stay in sales. I just enjoyed it, and was looking into going towards the SaaS route, essentially.
I'm curious, why SaaS or why tech? Because you've been at Keyence in manufacturing sales and you've been absolutely crushing it, constantly punching above your weight, getting promoted, reached the peak. I mean, the pinnacle where unfortunately it sounds like you still hit the ceiling, but why not just maybe join, another company in that space? What led you to think, that tech was maybe that next step that you wanted for yourself?
Yeah, you certainly were an influence in that. I came across your Twitter page back in the day, and kind of kept tabs on it, and started doing a little bit more researching. And then, of course, one of the bigger things out there that I think most salespeople or anyone in that kind of space looks at is RepVue. And you get a pretty quick understanding that in RepVue, pretty much all of the top companies are, tech companies, SaaS companies, things like that. So it's ended up being a route that I wanted to go, but also just looking at the way of the world, right? Everybody is moving in that direction. Things are getting probably a little cluttered with AI becoming as big as it is, but trying to push towards the AI SaaS world in general, and just kind of seeing what other salespeople were doing in that realm, and the ceilings that you had there and the opportunities that you had there at those companies were pretty solid. And that was a pretty big motivation for me. And on top of, like I said, being able to have, in more cases than not, the ability to work from home most of the days, and be able to spend some more time with my family.
Awesome. And yeah, it's true that one of the good things, with these tech companies is often the work-life balance. Not always, but very often it tends to be better just because of this hybrid slash remote setup. What are you doing right now in this new role that you've landed in December? I believe you're traveling, right?
I am, yep. So I'm doing a little traveling. Days that I'm not traveling, I am still working from home. It was actually interesting. I transitioned into a sales engineering path. So like I mentioned, I had studied engineering and had an engineering background. My role at Keyence was pretty technical, but more of a hands-on hardware product with some software, of course, that ran the hardware, but more hardware based. And then I actually ended up applying for the company that I'm at right now, Tractian, as an AE. spoke with one of the recruiters and said, man, happy to interview for this, but I think you'd be a really good fit for the sales engineering role. Would you be open to hearing that out? So first I had heard of it because as I mentioned at Keyence, I did quite literally everything from the sales engineering, the tech side of it, to the actual cradle to grave sales process and everything in between. So I was open to hearing what it was. And after, diving in a little bit deeper into what the sales engineering role encompassed, I was pretty interested in that and ended up taking the interview and going that way. And as the saying goes, when you get an opportunity to jump on a rocket ship, you don't ask which seat, you just get on. And initially the goal was to go into that and, in a year or 18 months from start, switching into an AE role. But that's up to see what happens at that point now.
Awesome. And is the goal like for you at this stage? Because again, I know you're very focused on being really good in the present role that you're in, but is the objective still to eventually move as into an AE role at Traction, or do you feel like you've discovered yourself like a new passion, that SE pod?
I got to tell you, it's been really nice. Most of the SEs, just in general, from my understanding, don't always come from a sales background. So I think being able to have, that kind of closing mentality and sales mentality just really helps when also having the technical side of things to it. So I've really enjoyed the role so far. It's been an incredible, change of pace of now I can just kind of focus on some of the technicals, the nitty gritty of the deals, helping customers understand stuff without, doing all of the prospecting and the legwork that I was doing, for the previous 7 years. So still up for debate, I think, at this point. And I've been really enjoying this probably more than I thought I would. But the nice thing is, like I said, the company's growing fast. There's so many opportunities that if I did want to make that jump, I'm sure it'd be a good route here. And I don't think you could really go wrong either way. But no decision has been made yet.
All right. All right, cool. And actually, just for maybe the people that will eventually hear this, can you maybe help them understand what is, so you used to be like a jack of all trade, like account executive slash account manager, CSM in your previous SE, in your previous role at Keyence. Now, what is a sales engineer essentially doing, at Traction?
My day to day right now consists of typically helping out. I work with 3 AEs that are typically going on discovery calls for the most part themselves, booking a lot of those meetings and essentially kind of doing a high level qualifying or disqualifying. Once we have more of a qualified discussion, then I'll come on and help answer, some more of the technical questions, as well as just in general going over, software demos, still have a sales component to it, still have a quota that I have to hit. And so there's still the sales aspect to it, which I love. And I love that I'm still influencing a lot of these deals. But after we do, a lot of the prospecting and kind of those second, third calls, typically we'll set up an on-site visit where we'll actually go on site together and I'll help out with scoping that project and making sure that everything is a good technical fit at that point to try and close a deal there. For the most part, covers essentially what it looks like. So once we do the on-site visit, at that point, it is, kind of going back and forth with the customer, making sure everything makes sense from an ROI business case side of things. And, hopefully we've already done that well before the actual on-site visit. And then we are going into closing that deal and getting the customer moving.
What's the best part about this new roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, I think the fact that, like I said, I have a quota still, so there's still a lot of influence on the deal. I was somewhat expecting when I heard the sales engineering term at this that it was going to be less of the sales and more of the engineering, but there's still certainly a lot of influence that we have in terms of sculpting that, doing the product pitch, and helping out after understanding what their things are. So my favorite thing about it is that we're still doing it just in a more technical aspect, so can still kind of use that technical background that I've had and have been working on for the past decade or so.
Yeah, and I think this is what I really was the most proud of when I think about working, about your case, because it wasn't just a matter of like finding a good role or a good company, but one that really fitted like really well your background in a way that what you're bringing to the table is a unique competitive advantage. Because not only have you been a hunter and a farmer, but you also have that specific knowledge of working in that space for years. And the combination of those three things allow you to interface, with customers, with prospect in the way that the traditional, sales rep just cannot. So I think that was like, it was really just made for you. And beyond the fact that the role itself was made for you, I think the organization, I think, is worth mentioning. Because if I recall well, like this is one of of the fastest growing company in the US, right?
Yep, they are a big thing that we've been kind of boasting about recently is being on Deloitte's most innovative and top AI companies. I believe they landed number 24 on that list out of like 500 companies. And same thing, right? Looking at RepVue is one of those where it's like, it seems almost too good to be true when you see they have 94, 95 score on there and nothing but great reviews. So it was a no-brainer once we kind of started making it through the interview process and seeing how they handled everything.
Awesome. So really just for people that use RevVue, you feel like RevVue actually provides good intel on, like, is it the real deal once you're actually on the other side of
Yeah, I
the
think
fence?
RepVue is incredible. I think there's a lot of really good insights on there, and I think anybody that really is honing in on their sales career and understanding where they want to be, there's a lot to be said about RepVue. And I think a lot of what your program was great at too for helping out is narrowing down what companies and what to look for within RepVue, because of course there's some companies that are fantastic scores, but they might only have 4 ratings, 5 ratings, or something like that on it. So making sure that there's enough data to kind of back up what those companies look like and how they're performing. But overall, yes, I think it's an incredible tool and super helpful for looking for new opportunities and being able to get a first glance at, what salespeople are saying about those roles.
I joke with people sometimes that the most helpful thing for salespeople are one, uncapped commission, two, both-side sales guy, and three, review. Because I
Yep.
feel like between those three things, you have enough to make a lot happen. All right, cool. I want to backtrack here for a minute and just make it less about you and more about me, Cocoon. I'm curious, it takes a kind of special kind of person to trust an internet cartoon with their career, especially someone who's been committed for a company for 10 years, who's not taking this decision lightly of changing, especially, you had family responsibilities. I'm just curious, like, why did you trust me? I'm sure there was other option. I'm sure you could have done it on yourself. I'm just curious about like your thinking process, that kind of led you to us working together.
Yeah, it was definitely something I did a good amount of due diligence on for the exact reason, right? It's we had the cocoon character, and it's wanted to make sure I'm not just tossing my money nowhere to help out with this and to help myself. But at the end of the day, if you want to make things happen, you kind of got to invest in yourself. And that's essentially what it came down to. So as I mentioned, I was following your stuff on Twitter for quite some time, went through a ton of your threads, a ton of your YouTube stuff, and you had information that I don't think somebody would have just put out there for the sake of scamming people, essentially. I think you were doing it to try and really help and make a difference. And clearly a lot of hours put into this type of stuff. I know we had our initial call just to kind of screen it out and see that it was a good fit. And even then, I said, well, you know what, this all still sounds good, but I would love to get a reference in which you gladly hooked me up with one of the other guys that was in the program. And him and I probably talked for an hour to an hour and a half initially just about you, about the program, about what it is, what it consists of. And that was, what kind of gave me that green light and go ahead to say this is trustworthy and it works. And I actually on the phone call, I had him send me a LinkedIn request as we were on the phone to make sure that he he was also
You never
not
showed me
scamming
about
me.
that.
Yeah, from your side. So he obviously obliged to that, and it was good to go. So yeah, I certainly did my due diligence on that and made sure that I wasn't trying to get scammed on it. But yeah, that's long answer short. That was a big part of it all.
Awesome, awesome. Then he never mentioned that part to me.
Yeah.
It's hilarious. No, that you actually said it. The tipping point was that live LinkedIn invite.
Yep. Had
Um,
to make sure he was real there.
I mean, that's fair. That's totally fair. When you joined the incubator, okay, from the moment like you decided to pull the trigger, you booked your spot and we started working together, like at which part of this process, what was the specific moment where it clicked, where you felt like, okay, this was worth the money, basically. This was worth every money, every penny, basically, I put into it.
Let's see. When I first kind of realized, yeah, this was worth it. So let me just background and preface with this. So as I mentioned, when we first started working together, my wife was 8, almost 9 months pregnant with our second. So I think we started in right in the beginning of August, and we had my second kid August 20th. So that put a little bit of a delay on things. And truth be told, in the first little bit, as you can imagine, I was pretty packed with a lot of stuff. So, doing a lot of the little things within your program, I had my hands full and I didn't have a ton of time to do it while still working my job and everything from there. So I didn't put in nearly as much as I probably should have in the beginning and thought, well, you know what, I'll just get by and can do this. And then stuff wasn't really clicking because I wasn't doing it. I wasn't doing what I paid to do. After things were finally settled down after about a month or so, we kind of had another sit down and said, all right, let's scrap this. There's already been some companies that are now hiring again. There's a new process that we're looking at. Let's start fresh here. Let's get together again. Now your top companies, let's look at where we're going here, and let's start rebuilding this. Once we started rebuilding this, and I started taking it as a far more serious endeavor the next time through, things started to click a lot more. I'd say one of the big ones that stuck out immediately was sending the Loom videos and just doing things that, other candidates certainly were not doing. So taking a video and walking through a 30, 90, 365-day timeline of what you can expect from me as a candidate walking onto your team, and me showing my face doing that, and giving essentially a quick pitch into how I'm going to be as a salesperson stood out. And I got some immediate replies from CCOs, CROs, and high-level people of different companies. So once that started happening quickly, I go, okay, yep, this is what we're talking about when it comes down to like doing these little things that you think, do I want to spend the time doing it? But it is those things that anybody can go on LinkedIn and click easy apply and have 30 applications submitted in 20 minutes. But it is going above and beyond that, recruiters and all of these high-level people start seeing that really sticks out. So that's for me the point where I said, okay, this is different, and this is something that I'd never even thought about doing before. And it immediately made differences in the amount of interviews I was receiving and just conversations I was having.
I'm curious, like before we even threw down the looms and maybe even like before joining the incubator, had you tried on your own to kind of, land interviews with certain of those companies, or were you just waiting, or us to start work, for you to start working with someone? I just want to know, like, I'm curious, like the before state of things, essentially.
I was certainly looking at other spots slightly more passively, of course, but yeah, still doing it, and it was one of those things where throwing applications into every one that I saw for the easy apply, and doing it just kind of pretty quickly and somewhat half-heartedly with that. But yeah, doing that, and then it ended up just resulting in a crazy amount of just rejections, not doing anything, and just kind of the form resumes. And as we kind of talked about, I came from the hardware side of things and not really the SaaS background. So that was already something that I had to overcome right out of the get-go with it. So kind of trying to be able to reframe that and make it look different was a huge part of your process. But yeah, in all, I was doing some searching before, changing things on my resume with AI, tweaking it based on buzzwords that the applications had in them and things like that. But certainly not to the extent that you and I were doing.
The big mistake, unfortunately, Leslie, a lot of people make is thinking tweaking, with AI is what's going to get you interviews. It's not. Everyone's using AI. Everyone's using buzzwords. Everyone is somehow the best rep on their team. Everyone's somehow President's Club winner. Like that's not what get people interviews. What does is like positioning, and positioning is just means that you're talking to the hiring manager's fears that they have when they try to bring someone new to their organization. And you need to make sure that every bullet point is about them. It's not about you and your, whatever social proof you've done. And I think also that the work that we did during the onboarding call, we just focused your experience on the right things. I think was a bit refreshing, I think, to the hiring managers when they scan through, hundreds of CV that just look alike. And when you stack these things together, this resume that is about them and not about the candidate, plus the outreach, you proactively going after them and adding up a Loom, where you introduce yourself and front load value is stacking those things together that allows you to just walk through walls and line up lots of interviews. So awesome. And do you feel like right now you're able, of course, you will not do it, but do you feel like if you ever hit a rough patch in your life, like, are you able to get good interviews like fast? You have a process for that?
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, like you said, hopefully I'm not going to be in that place anytime soon, because I do love what I'm doing right now and I'm really enjoying it. But yeah, on the chance that something were to happen or go awry, I would say absolutely. And that was one of the other things that I think you and I talked about early on is, right, I mean, being able to have all of these tools and being able to understand this. And it's one of those things where it does set you up for, down the road. This is not, hey, let's just get one job and see you later. Congrats on to the next type of thing. It's let's get this, but also let's learn. I mean, at the end of the day, you're selling yourself, you're selling what you provide, you're selling a solution to a company's problem, which is they need need more people, and you are those people. So yeah, absolutely. I feel very confident in being able to follow the same type of game plan that we did in order to get very similar results to what I got this time around.
Yeah, and again, I don't think like you will ever need that given the company you're at, and also just because I think you're really talented and you're gonna do really well there. But I think it's very important for me that you walking out of, this relationship, like you feel like you can land any role and you have the skills for it, and you know exactly how to go about the process. Whether or not you decide to pull the trigger on that is up to you and your circumstances of you're gonna be dealing with. But I'm glad that you feel at least like you have control, at least more control, over that part essentially of your career. Now, we talked about the highlight, the ability to just stand out and get like interviews real fast. I'm curious on the flip side, was there maybe like a low point, where you were like, I don't know if this is gonna work for me?
Yeah, I think like I had mentioned earlier, right after having my second kid and really not having a ton of motivation to do things, being so packed with my general work schedule, as well as having two kids at home and my stay-at-home wife, and I'm kind of taking care of the family and doing all of that. It was tough to go spend 30 minutes or an hour a day to really hone in on this stuff. After a little bit of doing it, more or less half-assed, I was, not getting a lot of the results that I wanted. And it's one of those things, right, where you can sit back and blame you and your program for not working, or taking a look in the mirror and say, well, are you actually doing anything that we set out to do? Right. So it was one of those moments where it's like, all right, well, time to go. We invested in ourselves to make this happen, and let's flip the switch here. Otherwise, we're just, let's throw the money down the drain, or let's go ahead and make it worthwhile, which obviously I took that second route, and here we are today. So yeah, that was probably the lower end of it, was just because of some of the outside circumstances, not really having much to do at all with your program.
People like typically that when they are in a company and they excel in that company and they stay like, how many years did you stay at Cadence again?
I was there for just under 7.
7 years. So that's a long time, in today's world, like people usually stay 2, 3. And what I hear a lot from other customers or prospects I meet with is like they're concerned, that they're not going to do as well in a different industry or a different company. In your case, like you went from, again, manufacturing to like a more tech-ish environment. I'm curious, like now that you're on the other side of the wall, like, do you find it to be enormously like, like difficult, or do you feel like you can totally plug and play and have everything, to just crush it?
Yeah, it was certainly plug and play, I would say. And part of it was this was a kind of a great stepping stone, if you will, into we still have a hardware product here. So obviously very familiar with that. But at the end of the day, it's all software based, and it's a big software AI platform that we use. So that was a little bit different, but it was still in the manufacturing world. So we're selling to a lot of the same types of people and customers that I was selling at previously. So that alone was a very simple transition for me. And no, I didn't really see a ton of things there. And as we've always talked about, right, it's always about reframing and understanding this. And coming from the hardware to the software world, a lot of recruiters and HR people will be, well, you don't have SaaS experience. Well, what does that exactly mean? And what skills are derived purely from this that I couldn't have had in my previous role in sales, right? And kind of flipping the script on them. And as it turns out, most people don't have a lot of really good answers to that. That really helped out with it. But no, there hasn't been anything. And now looking back on it, I was at that time, yeah, it's kind of shit or get off the pot. Do you want to keep going this route, or do you want to take a chance and do something? And, it worked out for the best. And even if it hadn't, I still feel confident that I would go back and do the exact same thing and run another opportunity and run another role and go from there. But at the end of the day, it wasn't worth it for me to kind of sit back and look at another 5 years and say, well, why didn't we take another chance anywhere else?
What are you getting, with traction, with this new role that you didn't have basically before?
It's night and day different roles. I mean, I went from a company that had 11,000 people globally to now one that has under 800 people. So a pretty big change in just structure and what that looks like in terms of rigidity of a process from Keyence to now what we have at Traction. It's definitely, they're going to trust you a little bit more to do your thing and do your job, and they hire you for a reason. But it is also so cool to be able to have influence where I can go, and if I really had something I want to bring up, reach out to our CEO or higher level people to see things through and have actual changes based on what I've seen in the field or what customers have requested and things like that. So that's been a really awesome thing, just to see how open everybody here at Traction is to that, but also just to helping people out. As soon as I came on day one, it's getting tons of messages from people welcoming me and having a very warm and welcome feeling that, you just don't get at a company of 12,000 people around the world.
No, I hear the benefits, about like a very large multinational structure looser versus something a little bit tighter and, the tighter community that comes with it. But I was more curious, like in terms of like benefit for you, like for you and for your family, like what did you get out of this?
Well, with that, for some of the things, I mean, going from the AE role to, a sales engineering role, an SE role, comp plan was slightly different, still have the commission structure and everything like that. But I had a pretty significant boost to just base salary, which being in the spot that I'm in right now with the kids and family, having some of that guaranteed money certainly helped out with that decision. But still having a comp plan that was 50K above, where my previous one was at Keyence. And not only that, but going on to RepVue again and seeing and understanding that most reps here are hitting their quotas. And those are realistic numbers that people are getting, as opposed to, seeing a company that has a 350K OTE, but 20% of them are actually hitting their quotas, right? So having a company of people that are all coming from a winning culture and pushing that was a really big thing here for me. So compensation, of course, that's, as salespeople, we always want to be compensated for what we do and what we get out of what we bring into the companies. So there was still that, with still a lot of really good potential, me being a sales guy and helping influence my AEs on their sales, still being able to do that. So of course, that's always going to be the number one thing I would imagine for almost all salespeople.
Yeah, and for me, like there's so much that could be impacted there in terms of like the compensation, but the 50K, was that base or like you would say like was that total compensation? Sorry, the difference just for me to understand.
Base, yeah, roughly speaking, that was like, there was actually probably a 40K bump to my base, and then closer to, let's see, yeah, closer to about like 10 or 20K above in just the commission side of things.
Awesome. For me, like really what matters when I think about this, like moves aren't always just that headline increase, but see your ability. First of all, like the base increase is always great, and 40K is fucking amazing. That's some entry level jobs salary there, but it's the ability to make a lot more of that because the company is just better equipped for success to smash quota consistently, predictably. And this is all like boils down to being in a sales environment that is growing fast. Because again, when a company is growing fast, means that company is selling a lot, means that reps are smashing their numbers, they level up quickly, they get promoted quickly, they get paid handsomely. The company has more money to invest into the business to improve product, acquire better talent, keep everything leveling up. And it's just this virtuous circle. And I see those things as arcs in terms of like a career arc, imagine. And there's one that could be like have a steeper. I think all arcs are good, but some others are essentially like allows you to just move like so much faster. They compound faster. And I find that ultimately like it's that vehicle that is moving faster and compounding many benefits in a way that maybe like more traditional industries just cannot match just because of the nature of their growth. For me, like the whole really goal of creating Cocoon and this program and everything I do is to help people realize that the growth and margin environment you're in is really paramount to the level of success that you can capture for yourself and your family. And I was just really glad to see that you were able to do a lot, with that information and really just put yourself at the heart of your industry, of what you knew. And yeah, I'm very excited essentially for what's going to come. What's going to be like that next year looking like for you? Like, what are going to be the focus? What's going to be the next step? I'm just like short-term future. What is this opportunity looking like?
And we just had our sales kickoff about a month ago, and that was kind of the first time to be able to meet a lot of the execs and just the sales teams and all of that within the company. So that was pretty awesome, and just seeing the growth that we are going on as a company offers to give a lot of growth within the company as well. So, it was funny. I think we had 40% of the people there were hired within the previous 3 months, and it's continuing to go down that trajectory of we need to keep hiring as we're growing like crazy, which of course opens up roles for management, for more senior roles, to just continue to go along that path. So ideally, it's going there. And I think at a role like this, while I wasn't as interested in managing at my previous role, it might be one that I would certainly be open to looking at on this one and helping people understand and push newer, SEs or sales guys to come into that side. Or it could end up going down, the AE route as well. So what's nice is that I think there's a lot of options that I can kind of pick from, given that I do my job well and continue grinding for the next little bit. But all that to say, I think there's a few good options here. And that's what also intrigued me about taking an opportunity like this.
Awesome. And based on I mean, the reader doesn't know this, but you recently joined the incubator to become a coach. And based on some of the advice I'm seeing you and how you're helping other reps level up, I think any company that gives you a team, I think, is going to be quite lucky. And I think they can go blindfolded knowing that, this team is going to just smash their numbers. So excited to hear that you might want to give this, a more serious thought. Obviously we'll see what time reveals to you in terms of like your preference and direction you want to take this. Cool. Last question. Last question for you. I'm curious, like if someone, is watching this right now and they're in the same spot. I'm talking, for example, imagine someone who's in traditional sales, okay, who's been doing really good. He's in a good spot. He can do better. He's contemplating maybe making a move. He's thinking about tech, but has some apprehension, about it. Like, what would you tell them?
First thing is, my phone line's always open, so I'm always happy to refer and talk to people in the same way that Dan was able to do that for me, right? I mean, that was a pretty big closing, and as it is in sales, right? Sometimes the best ways to close deals are through referrals and things like that because you get those real customers and real answers to it. So there's that. But two, I'd say do something similar where I did. I mean, I just devoured your Twitter page. I went through a lot of your content, went through your material, and saw that this is all stuff that I wasn't doing. And it was all stuff that was very well thought out. And again, it wasn't something that was put together through some AI slop that clearly had no good end goal. So I did a lot of due diligence on that side of things, looked through it, looked through your website, looked through talking to different people that had gone through it. And that in total was what allowed me to, make that decision to invest in myself and in the program for that. So I'd say if you have any apprehensions, ask to reach out to people that have worked with you, but also just do the due diligence. Go look at some of the stuff, read the threads, watch a YouTube video that you have, because you have so many of them that are long form, but so much good and valuable information that people would charge a ton of money for just something like that. And it's all out there for free for you to just kind of pick up on. And you really are trying to help people. So I'd say do your due diligence on you through Twitter and YouTube and do some reaching out as well.
Awesome. This is good advice. Don't take my word for it. Like, go check out the stuff. And if it resonates and you want to dig deeper, then either reach out to Michael or book a call with me and we'll see if we can help or not. All right. That was awesome. Thank you very much for this call. And I'm looking forward to continue building together inside the incubator. And I'll always be there, dude. If you have any question, career-wise, if you're at a crossroad, different direction you could go, you want to strategize through a situation, whatever it is, you Slack me and we can do it together. But I think I've taken enough of your day today. And I want to thank you again for the opportunity to just, share your experience.
Yeah, you got it. No, it's the least I can do, and I appreciate you helping me out because, like I said, I don't know if I'd be here today without the help of you and pushing for a lot of that stuff. So yeah, thank you for that, and no problem at all. It's always great catching up with you.
All right. I'll talk to you soon, okay? Take
All right,
care.
yep, bye bye.
Bye.